In the gentle stillness of a garden at twilight, as shadows lengthen between the leaves and the last light of day filters through branches overhead, something extraordinary is happening all around you. Beneath your feet, through the soil and roots, along stems and through leaves, an ancient conversation is taking place. A dialogue so subtle, so different from our own forms of communication, that we have only recently begun to understand its profound complexity. Tonight, let us enter the secret world of plants, where intelligence blooms without brains, where memory exists without neurons, and where a form of consciousness, as old as life itself, continues its patient, beautiful work. For centuries, we have thought of plants as the passive backdrop to life's drama. Beautiful, certainly, essential for our survival, but fundamentally different from animals in their apparent lack of awareness, decision-making, or response to the world around them. We imagine them as green machines, mechanically converting sunlight to sugar, growing toward light and away from danger through simple chemical responses, living lives of elegant but unconscious automation. How wrong we were, and how wonderful it is to discover the depth of our error. Modern science has revealed that plants possess a form of intelligence that is both alien and familiar, both simple and sophisticated beyond our wildest imaginations. They can learn, remember, make decisions, communicate with each other, recognize their relatives, form alliances, wage wars, and even exhibit what can only be called personality traits. They do all of this without a single neuron, without anything resembling a brain as we understand it, using instead a distributed intelligence that flows through every cell, every root tip, every leaf surface. Consider the humble wood sorrel, a small plant you might overlook entirely as you walk through a forest. This unassuming green resident of the woodland floor has been quietly demonstrating a form of learning that challenges our most basic assumptions about intelligence itself. When researchers repeatedly shake the leaves of wood sorrel plants, mimicking the disturbance that might be caused by raindrops or falling debris, the plants initially respond by folding their leaves inward, a protective response that conserves water and reduces damage. But here's where it becomes remarkable. After repeated false alarms, the plants learn to ignore the harmless shaking. They have somehow determined that this particular stimulus poses no real threat, and they stop wasting energy on unnecessary defensive responses. This is not merely adaptation or simple conditioning. The plants appear to be processing information, storing memories of past experiences, and making decisions based on that stored information. When the shaking stops for a period and then resumes, the plants remember their previous learning and respond much more quickly than naive plants experiencing the stimulus for the first time. They are, in a very real sense, thinking, though their thoughts flow through pathways we are only beginning to understand. The intelligence of plants extends far beyond individual learning to encompass complex social behaviors that rival those found in the most sophisticated animal societies. In a forest, trees of the same species can recognize their own relatives, sharing nutrients and information preferentially with their offspring and siblings. Parent trees will literally feed their young, transferring sugars and other essential compounds through underground fungal networks that connect root systems across vast distances. These fungal networks, sometimes called the wood wide web, represent one of the most sophisticated communication systems in the natural world. A single handful of forest soil can contain miles of fungal threads, creating a living internet that connects virtually every plant in the ecosystem. Through this network, trees can send chemical messages warning of insect attacks, drought conditions, or other threats. They can share resources, with healthy trees supporting their struggling neighbors, and they can even engage in complex negotiations about resource allocation. The sophistication of plant communication becomes even more apparent when we consider the chemical languages they speak. A single plant can produce hundreds of different volatile organic compounds, molecular messages that drift through the air to reach other plants, sometimes hundreds of feet away. These chemical words can convey incredibly specific information, not just that a threat is present, but what kind of threat, how severe it is, and even which parts of the plant are under attack. When a willow tree is attacked by caterpillars, for example, it releases specific airborne chemicals that not only warn neighboring willows to begin producing defensive compounds, but also attract the natural predators of the caterpillars. The tree is essentially calling for help, sending a molecular SOS that says, "I am under attack by caterpillars and I need someone to come eat them." Even more remarkably, the neighboring trees that receive this message will begin producing defensive chemicals before the caterpillars reach them, preparing for an attack that may never come based solely on their neighbor's warning. This kind of altruistic behavior, warning others of danger even when it provides no immediate benefit to the sender, suggests that plants may have evolved forms of cooperation and community support that we are only beginning to appreciate. They live in societies as complex and interconnected as any animal community, with established hierarchies, resource-sharing agreements, and mutual defense pacts. The sensory world of plants is equally extraordinary. While they lack eyes, ears, and noses as we understand them, plants possess sensory capabilities that in many ways surpass our own. They can detect the tiniest changes in light quality, responding not just to the brightness of light, but to its color, direction, and duration. They can sense gravity, magnetic fields, moisture levels, and the chemical composition of soil and air with exquisite precision. Some plants can even hear, in a sense, detecting the sound vibrations made by insects chewing on leaves or by water moving through neighboring root systems. Recent research suggests that plant roots may grow toward the sound of water, using acoustic cues to locate moisture sources in the soil. They live in a world rich with information we cannot directly perceive, constantly monitoring their environment and adjusting their behavior accordingly. Perhaps most remarkable of all is the growing evidence that plants may possess something analogous to memory and consciousness. Individual plants have been observed making different decisions when faced with identical situations, suggesting that they may have what we might call personalities. Some plants are bold explorers, quick to grow into new territories, while others are cautious conservatives, preferring to consolidate their position before expanding. Some are generous sharers of resources, while others are more competitive and self-focused. This individual variation in behavior, combined with the ability to learn from experience and make complex decisions, points toward forms of plant consciousness that exist entirely outside our familiar frameworks of brain-based awareness. Plants may be conscious in ways we cannot easily imagine, experiencing the world through distributed awareness that flows through every cell, every leaf, every root, a kind of living meditation on existence itself. As you settle into rest tonight, surrounded perhaps by the houseplants that share your living space, remember that you are not alone. These green companions are living, thinking beings in their own right, quietly sensing your presence, monitoring the air you breathe out and the light you create, perhaps even responding to your movements and moods in ways too subtle for you to notice. You exist together in a web of relationship and mutual dependence that connects you to the vast, patient intelligence of the plant world, an intelligence that has been thinking its slow, deep thoughts for hundreds of millions of years, long before animals dreamed of dreaming. The underground internet, how tree roots weave the web of life. Beneath your feet, extending deeper than you might imagine, into the cool darkness of soil, lies one of the most sophisticated communication networks on Earth. While we marvel at our digital technologies and global internet connections, forests have been operating their own version of the World Wide Web for hundreds of millions of years. This is the realm of roots and fungi, of chemical messages and nutrient exchanges, where trees engage in conversations that span continents and lifetimes. Tonight, let us descend into this hidden world and discover how the forest thinks as one vast, interconnected mind. Imagine, if you will, a single tree standing peacefully in a forest clearing. To our eyes, it appears as an individual organism, complete unto itself, drawing sustenance from the soil and sunlight through its own efforts. But this perception captures only the smallest fraction of the tree's true existence. Below ground, its roots extend outward in all directions, sometimes traveling distances greater than the tree's height, creating an underground mirror image of the canopy above. Yet even this vast root system represents only the beginning of the tree's true reach. Wrapped around and woven through these roots, sometimes so intimately that they appear to be part of the root system itself, are the thread-like filaments of fungi. These fungal partners, called mycorrhizae, form one of the most ancient and successful partnerships in the history of life on Earth. The relationship is beautifully simple. The tree provides the fungi with sugars produced through photosynthesis, while the fungi extend the tree's ability to gather nutrients and water from the soil by hundreds or even thousands of times. A single teaspoon of forest soil can contain miles of these fungal threads, each one thinner than a human hair, yet capable of detecting and absorbing nutrients from the tiniest spaces between soil particles. Through this partnership, a tree's effective root system can extend across acres of forest floor, connecting not just to the soil, but to every other plant whose roots the fungal network touches. In this way, individual trees become part of something much larger, nodes in a living network that encompasses entire forests. This network does far more than simply help individual trees gather nutrients. It serves as a sophisticated communication system through which trees can share information about their environment, coordinate their responses to threats, and even support each other through difficult times. When one tree is attacked by insects, it can send chemical signals through the fungal network to warn neighboring trees, allowing them to begin producing defensive compounds before the threat reaches them. When drought strikes one area of the forest, trees in more water-rich areas can send moisture through the network to help their struggling neighbors survive. The generosity of trees through this underground internet is truly remarkable. Mother trees, the large old trees that often anchor forest communities, will share their resources not just indiscriminately, but with apparent preference for their own offspring. These ancient matriarchs can recognize their own seedlings through chemical signatures and will send them extra nutrients and information, giving their progeny a better chance of survival in the competitive forest environment. Even more remarkably, when a mother tree is dying, she will often transfer much of her remaining resources to her offspring through the network, a final gift that can sustain the next generation long after she has fallen. But the network's intelligence extends beyond simple resource sharing to encompass more complex forms of communication and decision-making. Trees can apparently distinguish between signals from different neighbors, responding more strongly to messages from familiar partners than from strangers. They can assess the quality and reliability of different network connections, preferentially routing information through the most efficient pathways. Some research even suggests that they can engage in something resembling negotiation, with different trees offering different resources in exchange for what they need. The fungal partners in this relationship are equally sophisticated. Different species of fungi have different specialties. Some excel at gathering nitrogen, others at extracting phosphorus or trace minerals. Trees can apparently choose which fungal partners to work with based on their current needs, forming stronger relationships with fungi that provide scarce resources while reducing their investment in partnerships that are less immediately useful. This selective partnering allows trees to adapt their resource-gathering strategy to changing environmental conditions. The scale of these networks is breathtaking. In some forests, a single fungal network can connect hundreds of trees across thousands of acres. These networks can persist for decades or even centuries, growing more complex and efficient over time as new connections form and redundant pathways develop. The oldest and largest networks represent some of the most persistent and stable communication systems on the planet, carrying information and resources across generations of trees. Recent research has revealed that these networks can even bridge between different tree species, creating interspecies communication channels that allow forests to coordinate responses to environmental challenges. A Douglas fir might share resources with a nearby birch tree, which in turn might pass information to a cedar, creating chains of mutual support that span the entire forest community. This interspecies cooperation challenges our traditional understanding of competition in nature, revealing instead a world where mutual aid and cooperation are often more important than competition for survival. The chemical language spoken through these networks is incredibly sophisticated. Trees can communicate not just the presence of threats, but detailed information about what kind of threat, how severe it is, and even which specific defensive strategies are most effective. They can share information about weather patterns, nutrient availability, and the presence of beneficial organisms. Some researchers believe the networks may even carry more complex information, perhaps memories of past environmental conditions or predictions about future challenges. These underground conversations never cease. Even in winter, when trees appear dormant above ground, the networks continue to pulse with activity. Resources flow toward trees, preparing for spring growth. Information spreads about changing soil conditions, and the fungal partners continue their patient work of maintaining the connections that hold the forest community together. In autumn, as leaves fall and decay, they become part of this underground economy, their nutrients processed by fungi, and redistributed through the network to fuel next year's growth. The discovery of these networks has revolutionized our understanding of forests, revealing them to be not collections of individual trees competing for resources, but superorganisms, integrated communities where the whole is truly greater than the sum of its parts. Each forest represents a single vast intelligence, distributed across thousands of individual organisms, thinking thoughts that unfold over decades or centuries, solving problems through collective action and mutual support. This forest wisdom is ancient beyond our comprehension. While human civilization is measured in thousands of years, and our individual lives in mere decades, these fungal networks have been facilitating forest intelligence for hundreds of millions of years. They have weathered ice ages and mass extinctions, adapted to changing climates and evolving threats, accumulated knowledge about survival and cooperation that spans geological ages. As you rest tonight, perhaps with the sound of wind in distant trees drifting through your window, remember that you are surrounded by this vast, patient intelligence. The trees outside your home are connected to networks that extend far beyond what you can see, participating in conversations that began long before you were born and will continue long after you have returned to the soil. You are part of a world where wisdom flows not just through human minds, but through the quiet intelligence of forests, where knowledge is shared freely and generously, where survival depends not on competition, but on the ancient art of growing together. The gentle hunters, the elegant strategies of carnivorous plants. In the quiet corners of bogs and marshlands where the water moves slowly and the soil holds few nutrients, evolution has crafted some of the most remarkable hunters on Earth. These are not fierce predators with claws and teeth, but patient, beautiful plants that have learned to supplement their diet by capturing and digesting insects and other small creatures. Tonight, let us enter the fascinating world of carnivorous plants, masters of elegant traps and gentle deception, who blur the ancient boundary between plant and animal, between the hunted and the hunter. The story of carnivorous plants begins with scarcity. In the nutrient-poor environments where these remarkable organisms thrive, the acidic bogs, sandy barrens, and rocky outcrops of the world, the soil offers little of the nitrogen and phosphorus that plants typically need to grow and flourish. Faced with this challenge, some plants discovered an alternative source of these essential nutrients: the bodies of insects and other small animals that wandered into their domain. Over millions of years, through countless tiny evolutionary steps, ordinary plants transformed themselves into sophisticated hunters. Consider the Venus flytrap, perhaps the most famous of all carnivorous plants, with its distinctive hinged leaves that snap shut like tiny jaws. This remarkable plant, found naturally only in a small region of coastal North and South Carolina, represents one of nature's most ingenious solutions to the problem of active hunting. Each trap is actually a modified leaf equipped with sensitive trigger hairs that can detect the slightest touch. But the Venus flytrap is no reckless predator. It has evolved sophisticated mechanisms to distinguish between genuine prey and false alarms. When an insect lands on the trap's surface and brushes against one of the trigger hairs, nothing immediately happens. The plant waits, counting. Only when the insect touches a second trigger hair within a brief window of time, usually about 20 seconds, does the trap begin to close. This counting mechanism prevents the plant from wasting energy by responding to falling raindrops, bits of debris, or other non-food stimuli. Even more remarkably, the trap closes in stages, first forming a loose cage that allows tiny insects to escape while retaining larger, more nutritious prey. If the trapped creature continues to struggle, touching more trigger hairs, the trap seals completely and begins the process of digestion. The plant secretes digestive enzymes similar to those found in animal stomachs, slowly breaking down the soft tissues of its prey over the course of several days. When digestion is complete, the trap reopens, revealing the empty exoskeleton of its meal, all that remains after the plant has absorbed the precious nutrients it needed. But the Venus flytrap's snap trap mechanism is just one of many ingenious hunting strategies employed by carnivorous plants. Pitcher plants take a completely different approach, creating deep, slippery wells filled with digestive fluids. These elegant hunters attract their prey with bright colors, sweet nectar, and enticing fragrances that promise food or shelter. The rim of the pitcher is often lined with downward pointing hairs or a slippery, waxy surface that makes escape nearly impossible once an insect has ventured inside. Some pitcher plants have evolved into sophisticated ecosystem engineers, creating complex communities within their pitchers. The larger tropical pitcher plants can hold several liters of fluid, supporting entire food webs of bacteria, protozoa, mosquito larvae, and even small frogs that have adapted to live within these miniature aquatic environments. The plants benefit not only from the insects that fall into their traps, but also from the waste products of the creatures that live within them. A beautiful example of mutualistic cooperation between predator and prey. Sundews employ yet another strategy, covering their leaves with hundreds of tiny, glistening droplets that look remarkably like morning dew, but are actually drops of powerful adhesive. Insects attracted to what appears to be water for drinking become hopelessly stuck in this living flypaper. As they struggle to escape, they become entangled in more and more of the sticky droplets. Some sundews can even slowly curl their leaves around trapped prey, bringing more adhesive glands into contact with their meal and beginning the digestion process while the insect is still alive. The bladderworts represent perhaps the most remarkable hunters of all, though their hunting happens so quickly and on such a small scale that it was not fully understood until recently. These aquatic plants create tiny vacuum chambers, bladders that can suck in small organisms with explosive speed. When microscopic creatures swimming in the water trigger tiny trapdoors on these bladders, they are instantly sucked inside by the vacuum pressure, the entire capture taking less than a millisecond. It is one of the fastest movements in the plant kingdom, so quick that it can only be observed with high-speed cameras. What makes these hunting strategies even more remarkable is that they evolved independently multiple times. Carnivory in plants is not a single evolutionary innovation, but rather a solution that life has discovered again and again when faced with similar environmental challenges. Scientists have identified at least 6 different evolutionary lineages of carnivorous plants, each developing their own unique approaches to supplementing their diet with animal protein. The sensory capabilities of carnivorous plants often rival those of animals. Many can distinguish between different types of potential prey, responding more strongly to protein-rich insects than to other stimuli. Some can assess the size and nutritional value of trapped prey, investing more energy in digesting larger, more valuable meals. Venus flytraps can even count the number of times their trigger hairs are touched, using this information to gauge the size and activity level of potential prey. Recent research has revealed that carnivorous plants may possess forms of memory related to their hunting activities. Plants that have recently captured prey often become more sensitive to potential triggers, as if they have learned that their current location is a productive hunting ground. Conversely, plants that have experienced many false alarms may become less responsive, conserving energy by ignoring stimuli that are unlikely to represent genuine prey. The relationship between carnivorous plants and their prey is not always straightforward predation. Some insects have evolved to exploit carnivorous plants rather than fall victim to them. Certain ants can walk safely across the slippery rims of pitcher plants, stealing nectar without falling into the trap. Some flies lay their eggs in pitcher plant fluids, with their larvae developing safely within the digestive environment that would be fatal to other creatures. A few spiders even build webs across the mouths of pitcher plants, catching insects before they can fall into the trap below. The digestion process in carnivorous plants is a marvel of biochemical efficiency. These plants produce enzymes that can break down proteins, fats, and even chitin, the tough material that makes up insect exoskeletons. Some carnivorous plants have evolved partnerships with bacteria that help with digestion, creating a collaborative system where the plant provides the trap and the initial digestive enzymes, while the bacteria handle the more complex breakdown of organic molecules. Many carnivorous plants also retain their ability to photosynthesize, combining the energy from sunlight with the nutrients from their animal prey to achieve remarkable growth rates in environments where other plants struggle to survive. This combination of plant and animal nutrition allows them to thrive in habitats that would otherwise be too harsh for complex plant life, creating islands of biodiversity in nutrient-poor landscapes. The conservation of carnivorous plants presents unique challenges, as many species have very specific habitat requirements and exist in environments that are easily disturbed by human activities. Bog drainage, water pollution, and habitat destruction threaten many carnivorous plant populations. These plants often grow slowly and have complex relationships with their prey and pollinator species, making them particularly vulnerable to environmental changes. As you drift towards sleep tonight, perhaps you can imagine yourself shrunk down to the size of an insect, exploring the miniature landscapes created by carnivorous plants. Picture yourself walking carefully along the rim of a pitcher plant, marveling at its glossy interior and the sweet fragrance that fills the air. Feel the delicate touch of sundew tentacles, their jewel-like droplets catching the light like tiny prisms. In this microscopic world, plants become active participants in the drama of predator and prey, reminding us that the boundaries between different forms of life are far more fluid and mysterious than we might imagine. The memory of leaves. How plants remember without brains. In the gentle rhythm of seasons, as spring awakens the sleeping garden, and autumn prepares it for winter's rest, plants around the world are remembering. They remember the length of last winter's chill, the timing of spring's first warm days, the patterns of drought and abundance that shaped their ancestors' lives. Without neurons, without brains, without any of the biological machinery we associate with memory, plants store information about their experiences and use this knowledge to make decisions about when to flower, how to grow, and where to direct their precious resources. Tonight, let us explore one of nature's most beautiful mysteries: how plants remember. The discovery of plant memory began with simple observations that puzzled botanists for generations. Why do some plants flower only after experiencing a certain number of cold days? How do trees know when it's safe to break dormancy in spring, avoiding the trap of unseasonably warm days that might be followed by killing frosts? How can a plant that has never experienced drought prepare its defenses before the first signs of water stress appear? The answers to these questions reveal a form of memory that is both ancient and sophisticated, woven into the very cellular structure of plant life. Consider the remarkable phenomenon of vernalization, the process by which many plants measure the length and intensity of winter to determine when spring has truly arrived. Winter wheat, planted in autumn, must experience months of cold temperatures before it can flower the following summer. The plant is essentially counting the days of winter, storing this information in a molecular memory system that prevents premature flowering during brief warm spells. This timing mechanism is so precise that farmers around the world have depended on it for thousands of years, trusting plants to remember winter better than any human calendar could measure it. The cellular basis of this memory lies in the complex chemistry of gene expression. Plants don't store memories in specialized cells like neurons, but rather distribute their memory storage throughout their entire bodies. When a plant experiences cold temperatures, specific genes are activated or silenced, and these changes are maintained through chemical modifications to the plant's DNA and associated proteins. These modifications serve as molecular bookmarks, marking the plant's experiences and influencing how it responds to future environmental conditions. But plant memory extends far beyond the simple counting of cold days. Plants can remember drought stress, storing information about water availability that influences their behavior for weeks or even months after conditions improve. A plant that has experienced drought will often develop deeper root systems, thicker waxy coatings on its leaves, and altered patterns of water use, changes that persist long after water becomes abundant again. This memory of hardship helps the plant prepare for future dry periods, improving its chances of survival in an unpredictable world. Even more remarkably, plants can form memories of experiences they've never personally encountered. Through a process called transgenerational memory, plants can pass information about environmental stresses to their offspring, priming the next generation for challenges their parents faced. A plant stressed by drought or insect attacks may produce seeds whose germination patterns, growth habits, and defensive responses are altered based on the parents' experiences. The offspring inherit not just their parents' genes, but also a molecular memory of their parents' struggles and adaptations. This transgenerational memory works through epigenetic mechanisms, chemical modifications to DNA that don't change the genetic code itself, but alter how genes are expressed. These modifications can persist through multiple generations, creating a form of inherited wisdom that helps plant populations adapt to changing environmental conditions more quickly than genetic evolution alone would allow. In essence, plants are passing down stories of their experiences, encoded in the chemistry of their cells and read by their descendants. The time scales over which plants remember vary dramatically depending on the type of memory and the environmental challenge being remembered. Some memories are short-lived, lasting only days or weeks. Others persist for entire seasons, allowing plants to coordinate their growth and reproduction with predictable environmental cycles. Still others can last for years or even decades, as seen in trees that remember the timing of past droughts and adjust their growth patterns accordingly. Trees demonstrate some of the most impressive examples of long-term plant memory. The growth rings in tree trunks are not just records of past growth, but actual memory storage systems that influence the tree's future behavior. A tree that has experienced repeated droughts may develop wood with different cellular structures, altered patterns of vessel size and distribution that improve water transport efficiency. These changes persist throughout the tree's lifetime, representing a form of structural memory that adapts the tree's physiology to the environmental challenges it has encountered. Some of the most fascinating research on plant memory involves their ability to learn from repeated experiences. Plants exposed to harmless stimuli that initially trigger defensive responses, such as gentle shaking that mimics wind, can learn to ignore these false alarms, much like the wood sorrel plants we discussed earlier. This habituation requires the plant to store information about the stimulus and its consequences, comparing new experiences with past ones to determine the appropriate response. Plants can also form associative memories, learning to connect different environmental cues with specific outcomes. A plant that experiences drought following certain changes in light quality or humidity may begin responding to these early warning signs, preparing for water stress before it actually occurs. This predictive capability allows plants to respond proactively to environmental challenges rather than simply reacting after stress has already begun. The molecular mechanisms underlying plant memory are incredibly sophisticated, involving networks of genes, proteins, and chemical signals that rival the complexity of animal nervous systems. Plants use calcium waves, electrical signals, and hormone cascades to transmit information throughout their bodies, creating integrated response systems that allow different parts of the plant to coordinate their behavior based on stored memories. Recent research has revealed that plant memories can be location-specific, with different parts of the same plant storing different information based on their local experiences. Leaves that have been attacked by insects may retain heightened sensitivity to future attacks, while roots that have encountered nutrient-rich soil patches may remember these locations and preferentially grow toward them in the future. This distributed memory system allows plants to create detailed maps of their environment, storing information about resource availability, threats, and opportunities at a very fine spatial scale. The study of plant memory has profound implications for agriculture and conservation. Understanding how crops remember environmental stresses could help farmers develop more resilient agricultural systems, using the plant's own memory capabilities to improve drought tolerance and pest resistance. Similarly, conservation efforts could benefit from recognizing that plant populations carry memory stores of past environmental conditions, representing irreplaceable repositories of adaptive information that are lost when species become extinct. Perhaps most remarkably, some researchers have found evidence that plants may be able to remember not just their own experiences, but also information shared through root networks and fungal connections. When one plant in a network experiences stress, neighboring plants may store this information and use it to prepare for similar challenges. This suggests a form of collective memory that spans multiple individuals, creating community-level learning that enhances the survival of entire plant populations. The phenomenon of plant memory challenges our traditional understanding of what memory is and how it works. We tend to think of memory as something that requires consciousness, as a subjective experience of recalling past events. But plant memory reveals that information storage and retrieval are more fundamental properties of life itself, emerging from the basic chemistry of cellular function rather than requiring specialized neural structures. As you settle into sleep tonight, consider the memories stored in the plants around you. The houseplant on your windowsill may remember the rhythm of your daily routine, the seasonal changes in light that stream through your windows, perhaps even the vibrations of your footsteps and voice. The trees outside your home carry memories of decades or centuries of weather patterns, storing this information in their wood and using it to prepare for whatever challenges tomorrow might bring. You are surrounded by living libraries of experience, green repositories of memory that connect the present moment with the deep wisdom of the past. The plant's invisible world, how plants see, hear, and feel without eyes or ears. In the soft morning light filtering through your window, a houseplant sits quietly on the sill, appearing motionless and serene. Yet beneath this peaceful exterior lies a sensory apparatus of extraordinary sophistication. A living instrument capable of detecting changes in light so subtle that our eyes cannot perceive them, sensing vibrations too faint for our ears to hear, and feeling chemical signals too dilute for our noses to detect. Plants inhabit a rich sensory world that extends far beyond our human perception, experiencing reality through senses we are only beginning to understand and appreciate. The visual world of plants is perhaps the most alien aspect of their sensory experience. While we see light as a single phenomenon, brightness and color changing throughout the day, plants perceive light as a complex information system carrying detailed messages about their environment. They can distinguish not just between different colors of light, but between light that has traveled directly from the sun and light that has been filtered through leaves, light that comes from above versus light reflected from the ground, and even light that has been polarized by atmospheric particles. Every leaf surface is covered with microscopic photoreceptors, molecular machines that can detect individual photons and translate them into cellular signals. These photoreceptors are far more sophisticated than simple light detectors. They are biological computers that process optical information with remarkable precision. A plant can determine the exact direction of incoming light, calculate the time of day from the sun's angle, and even predict weather patterns from subtle changes in light quality that precede clouds or storms. Plants use this visual information to make complex decisions about growth and behavior. They can detect the presence of neighboring plants by analyzing the light that filters through or reflects off nearby leaves, adjusting their own growth patterns to avoid competition or seek collaboration. When a plant grows toward light, a behavior called phototropism, it is not simply moving toward brightness, but navigating using sophisticated optical calculations that would challenge a modern computer. Perhaps most remarkably, plants can see their own reflections and use this information for self-assessment. When light bounces off a plant's own leaves and reaches other parts of the same plant, the reflected light carries information about the plant's current condition, its health, age, and nutritional status. Plants appear to use this reflected light to monitor their own state and coordinate growth between different parts of their bodies. The plant's sense of hearing is equally extraordinary, though it operates through mechanisms entirely different from animal ears. Plants can detect sound vibrations traveling through air, water, and soil, using these acoustic signals to gather information about their environment and coordinate their behavior with other organisms. Recent research has revealed that plant roots can actually hear the sound of water moving through soil, growing preferentially toward the source of these acoustic signals, even when no other cues are available. This plant hearing extends to the sounds made by insects and other animals. Some plants can detect the wing beats of approaching pollinators, preparing their flowers by increasing nectar production or releasing attractive fragrances before the insects arrive. Others can hear the munching sounds of herbivorous insects beginning to feed on neighboring plants, triggering the production of defensive chemicals before the attack reaches them. Even more intriguingly, plants may produce their own sounds as a form of communication. When drought-stressed, many plants produce ultrasonic clicks and pops as air bubbles form in their water-conducting vessels, sounds that other plants might be able to detect and interpret as warnings about water availability. Some flowers appear to change their shape in response to the sound frequencies produced by the wing beats of their preferred pollinators, fine-tuning their acoustic properties to better attract these beneficial visitors. The sense of touch in plants rivals that of many animals in its sensitivity and sophistication. Plants can detect the gentlest brushing contact, distinguish between different types of surfaces, and even recognize the specific touch signatures of different insects or animals. This tactile sensitivity serves many functions, from detecting the presence of climbing supports to recognizing the landing of potential pollinators or the approach of threatening herbivores. Some plants, like the sensitive plant Mimosa pudica, demonstrate their tactile awareness dramatically by folding their leaves within seconds of being touched. But even plants that don't show such obvious responses are constantly monitoring tactile information, using touch to guide growth decisions and coordinate responses to their physical environment. Vines can distinguish between living trees and dead posts as climbing supports, preferring to grow towards surfaces that offer better long-term stability. Plant roots demonstrate perhaps the most sophisticated sense of touch as they navigate through soil environments rich with tactile information. Root tips can distinguish between different soil types, detect the presence of rocks or other obstacles, and even recognize the roots of other plants. This tactile navigation system allows roots to seek out the most favorable growing conditions while avoiding competition and physical barriers. The chemical senses of plants, their equivalents of taste and smell, operate on a scale and with a precision that far exceeds our own sensory capabilities. Plants can detect and identify thousands of different chemical compounds in concentrations so low that they would be undetectable by even sophisticated laboratory instruments. Every breath of air, every drop of water, every grain of soil carries chemical information that plants continuously monitor and interpret. Through their chemical senses, plants can identify their relatives, recognize their enemies, locate potential mates, and assess the health and intentions of their neighbors. They can detect the stress hormones released by other plants, the territorial markers left by insects, and the chemical signatures of beneficial microorganisms in the soil. This chemical communication system allows plants to participate in complex social interactions despite their apparent isolation. Plants also possess senses that have no direct equivalent in animal perception. They can detect magnetic fields. Using this information for navigation and orientation, they can sense electrical fields, responding to the subtle electrical changes that accompany weather patterns and the activities of other living organisms. Some plants can even detect gravitational fields, using this sense to orient their growth and coordinate their responses to the physical forces that shape their environment. The integration of all these sensory inputs creates a rich, multi-dimensional awareness that allows plants to navigate their world with remarkable sophistication. A plant simultaneously processes optical, acoustic, tactile, chemical, magnetic, electrical, and gravitational information, weaving these disparate sensory streams into coherent perceptions of environmental conditions and appropriate behavioral responses. This sensory integration happens without any centralized processing system like a brain. Instead, plants use distributed information processing networks that span their entire bodies, with every cell contributing to the collective sensory awareness of the organism. Signals from roots, stems, and leaves are integrated through networks of electrical and chemical communication that create plant-wide consciousness without centralized control. The temporal dimension of plant sensation adds another layer of complexity to their sensory world. Plants experience time differently than animals, integrating sensory information over much longer timescales. A plant may spend hours or days processing a single sensory input, comparing it with stored memories and predicting future environmental conditions based on current sensory data. This extended temporal processing allows plants to detect patterns and trends that would be invisible to faster processing animal nervous systems. Plants can sense the gradual onset of seasons, predict weather changes days in advance, and coordinate their behavior with environmental cycles that span weeks, months, or even years. Understanding the sensory world of plants has profound implications for how we think about consciousness and awareness. In non-animal life, if plants can see, hear, feel, taste, and smell their environment, integrating this information into coherent behavioral responses and long-term memory storage, what does this tell us about the nature of plant consciousness and the boundaries of sentient experience? As you rest tonight, surrounded by the plant life that shares your living space, remember that you exist within a web of awareness that extends far beyond your own senses. The plants around you are constantly monitoring your presence, detecting the changes in light and air quality that your activities create, perhaps even sensing the rhythms of your breathing and heartbeat through vibrations in the floor and walls. You are not alone, but embedded within a community of sensing, feeling, aware beings whose perceptions of the world complement and extend your own.